Hey everyone, I'm Eboni K. Williams along with Eric Bolling and Kat Timpf, and we are the Fox News Specialists. ISIS is calling for an all-out war on the West as the Islamic world begins the Ramadan holiday. There are big developments on multiple fronts. Authorities in Britain say they've in large part taken down the terror network responsible for the Manchester suicide attack. 10 people have been arrested and 8 are currently still in custody. And in Egypt, at least 28 Coptic Christians were slaughtered after 10 gunmen opened fire on the bus they were traveling on. And ISIS-linked militants in Indonesia and the Philippines have launched brazen assaults, leaving both countries reeling. Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly addressed the terror threat earlier today.
It's everywhere. It's constant. We've had 4 major terrorist attacks in a week in 4 different places, obviously Manchester, Egypt, Philippines, and Indonesia, by generally the same groups. It's nonstop. The good news is for us in America, we have amazing people protecting us every day. DHS, obviously, FBI. Fighting the away game is DOD, Department of Defense, CIA, NSA, working with these incredible allies we have in Europe and around the world. But it can happen almost here anytime.
Eric, my goodness, this thing is getting worse and worse. Each passing day, each passing year, it seems to be broadening out. Secretary Kelly talks about at least we're doing things better than some of our friends and allies. Where can we find comfort at this point?
Well, comfort, I'm not sure we're going to find any comfort. I mean, I think today we saw a video released by ISIS, and you talked about the all-out war that they're calling for. I'm going to quote this from the video. This is ISIS saying, Muslim brothers in Europe who can't reach the Islamic State lands, attack them in their homes, their markets, their roads, and their forums. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a pure form of evil and hate, and the only way to do that is to exterminate, but also exterminate the ideology. Back here at home, CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, is supposed to be kind of an outreach and olive branch so that Muslims can come and assimilate into our society. I spent an hour on CARE's website today looking for one condemnation of either the Manchester attacks or the Coptic Christians who were killed this morning in Egypt. Not a one, not a mention on that site unless I was missing it. They've tweeted about it, but there's press releases. If you want to really extend an olive branch and show that there is a moderate Muslim community that wants to fight this evil, then it's groups like CARE that need to step forward and release a press release that represents the Muslim communities in America and condemn the evil. But they don't seem to want to do that.
Okay, how about that? I mean, obviously we want our moderate Muslim friends on board with this, but can and should they be doing more?
I think that a lot are. I think maybe some are afraid to. A lot of the people certainly that are in these terror cells areas where there's more extremist groups, very extremist groups, they wouldn't want to say anything because they're afraid of them too. So it's a very complicated issue. But you're right, Eric, absolutely starts with ideology. Absolutely, because if you are hardcore about this and you want to blow yourself up and get all your virgins and destroy the West, nothing is going to stop you in terms of logistics.
They have nothing to lose. And
Absolutely.
I think you're right. At this point, Eric, everybody's got to get aggressive, including our moderate Muslim friends. Let's meet today's specialist. She's a former National Security Council staffer under both Presidents Obama and George W. Bush. She's also a Fox News contributor, and she's vice president with the Jones Group International, a national security firm. But she used to specialize in being a professional ballerina. Miss Gillian Turner is here. He's a radio talk show host. He's spokesperson for the Boys and Girls Club of New Jersey, also a proud alum of Saturday Night Live, but he specializes in all things New Jersey. Joe Piscopo is here. Thank you both for being here.
Sir.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I didn't tell you that.
Oh, no. Wait until we get in the back half of the show. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of those twirling days. But, Gillian, you obviously have a deep and long history and understanding of these national security concerns. One thing that struck me that came out in the news today, the leaks, and Kat will talk about that in the next block some, but the leaks caused grave national security threats, so much so that for a minute it looks like Britain was maybe chilling on their communication with some of their intelligence, and Theresa May came out very upset at that New York Times leak that came out. So how can we address the leak issue as it relates to national security?
Well, that was a clear reprimand from the British. Subtle, but it was definitely a reprimand, and the closest they've come to doing something like that publicly with the United States in a very long time. To just address Manchester for a second. So we've now seen 1 week, 4 terrorist attacks spread across the world. You guys were talking about this endemic problem of terrorism. I think what this week highlights for us is that while most of the world's attention has been focused on ISIS in the last 3 years, and rightly so, other terrorist organizations continue to thrive and proliferate around the globe. Al-Qaeda is now operational in more countries than it's ever been. We've had the Taliban, major resurgence in Pakistan this year. Organizations in Africa like Boko Haram in Nigeria, Al-Shabaab in Somalia are creating havoc in that region of the world. And so I think while it's right to focus on ISIS, we got to keep this picture broad, and I think that's what General Kelly was trying to remind folks in his remarks the other day.
Joe, is it whack-a-mole? To Gillian's point, I mean, if we put all our resources in annihilating, I think is the Trump administration's word, on ISIS, do we then open ourselves up to the dangers of these outspurting groups?
Yeah, you got to shut them down now. That's why I have to say, and on the radio every morning we talk about it. People are backing the president, man. They like that he has this travel pause. That's the least you can do. We've had it. We're done. Shut it down. It's cyclical. Every week something happens. No, excuse me, every 24 hours. Yeah. Look what happened with the Christians. There's a slaughter of Christians. No one's stepping up. And I speak on behalf of the radio audience, kind enough to listen to us every morning, man. They are ticked off. You gotta shut it down. And this intel leak, it goes to British intelligence, it goes to United States intelligence, goes into the deep state. The deep state tries to take Donald Trump down, like Donald Trump's gonna look bad. What they're gonna do is keep Donald Trump in office for 4 more years.
You know what's going on also, Eboni, is that this ISIS video that we mentioned, yeah, they highlight Europe and specifically say, you know, go ahead, attack them at their homes, on the roads, in their gatherings. But they also put up a video of Las Vegas. Now, this is a big weekend. If we need to really understand something else, too. Ramadan starts tonight, depending where you are and whether the new moon is out tonight or tomorrow night. Ramadan starts beginning likely tonight, and they're stepping up these terror attacks. You know, I would think that it's coinciding with the beginning of Ramadan.
Absolutely. Not only to target Western cultural events and religious events and things like that, but to target people in the Muslim community too. We've seen how vicious and non-discriminating, crazy, you know, radical Islamic terrorists are when it comes to their victims. Another thing I wanted to point out, what Eric was talking about a moment ago, about having the moderate Muslim community step up here. This is part of President Trump's idea that he outlined on the trip this week, to have a NATO sort of Arab counterpart, to, for all intents and purposes, an Arab NATO. So this is a coalition made up of Western allies that are Arab practicing nations, and they are going to help not only fund this, as we've seen countries do, but to help actually put some boots on the ground, as an aphorism, and to really put some skin in the game here. And this is going to go a long way towards quelling some of that.
Right. I'm glad you brought up skin in the game.
Anti-Islamic sentiment.
My question to you, Kat. I'm glad you brought up skin in the game, because there's a lot of people resisting President Trump for various reasons. But in this moment, right, in this moment, where it's literally us and our way of life against some of those in this world, what do you think we can do collectively to support this president, at least in the common thread of defeating and annihilating these terror threats?
Well, I think something that President Trump is doing explicitly, which Gillian was kind of touching on, which we haven't really seen as much, is he's really looking at this as a global problem. Not just NATO, but he's going to Saudi Arabia and he's talking about terrorism in extremism in Saudi Arabia, which was incredible. And I know we've talked about that in this show a lot. It has to be a combined effort, because there's nothing in terms of anything on this earth that will stop these people. We saw this in Manchester. They had the best security there, and they just created a soft zone for terrorism right outside of it. So in terms of a lot of these policies and a lot of these security features, they can make us feel better. But when you're dealing with someone like that, when they're planning on blowing themselves up, things like that aren't really going to work.
Well, although Joe points this out, when you are dealing with this element that is hell-bent and fanatic about killing the Western society and killing our way of life because we're the infidel, then I think you have a case to be made to say, hold on, let's hold off on some of the travel from these countries of origin that are feeders for terror, like Libya, where this terrorist family came from originally. And you hold off, and you're not saying you can never come here. You're saying we need to step up our vetting process. We need to make sure that whoever's coming in here isn't planning on blowing up one of our schools or our concerts.
You know, Eric, I don't think, again, most Americans have a problem with that. When you lay it out like that, and first of all, Gillian, you know better than me, that was Obama's administration had those targeted geographical areas as well for that same reason. I don't think that's what most
so how did it get bad when Trump...
I'm going to tell you why. It's the way he rolled it out himself with the rhetoric, made people turned off by it right away. And they just say never.
When he originally talked about Muslims as a general ban, that was probably imprecise. I'm going to give him a tiny bit of benefit of the doubt and say he wasn't being as careful and as articulate around the issue as he would have liked to have been, and as we've seen him be since. But for some people, it's hard for them to forget it. Now, I'm going to say in this moment, and tell me what you think about this, Joe, I think maybe we need to not forget it, because we shouldn't forget anything the president said on the campaign trail, but refocus on what we need to be doing collectively as an entire society that wants to defeat this threat.
Yeah, because also a big shout out to the big Muslim community in New Jersey, Eric. You know that great Muslim Syrian Americans.
Yeah.
But what we ask is, as Americans, what I hear from the radio audience is, what is the end game for the terrorists? What is the end game?
Destroy
I remember
us.
as a kid watching the Munich massacre. What has the PLO accomplished since then? All those years. The message has to be sent. You will accomplish absolutely nothing. We will win. You ain't taking us down.
but not from us, Joe. It can't be Joe Piscopo, Bolling, or Ebony and Kat and Gillian. It's got to be from within the moderate Muslim community that has children too, that has children at risk as well. If they blow up people here, even if they're Muslim or moderate Muslims, they're still Americans. They still want to kill them. They die too. But there's silence. There's silence from
That's not
within
true.
this
But
community.
therein
Well,
lies.
it is.
There's not complete silence among moderate Muslims.
I'm telling you, listen, I spent an hour on the CARE website. That is the go-to PR group for moderate Muslims for integrating into American society. Council on American Islamic Relations. They had nothing. They absolutely did not push back on any of these bombings yet.
I think what you just laid out, Eric, actually, I know you didn't intend it this way, but it underscores to me, from a policy perspective, what was problematic with the original version of the travel ban, and to a certain degree, the current version, which is precisely the countries that we target in this ban for practical purposes in this country. As you say, we don't want people coming here who are not sympathetic to Western culture and Western way of life and actually are seeking to destroy it.
Yes.
That is true. But these are precisely the countries that we need the most in the fight against terror. We need their voices, we need their money, and we need their arms. And so by alienating them in the way that this was rolled out,
we don't need
they're
them.
not going,
we don't need Libya.
But I would argue that we do.
Right.
We don't need them from a security bare bones
We
perspective.
need Jordan, we need Saudi Arabia, we need the United Arab Emirates, and we kind of have them. That's where it's got to come from.
I disagree. I think we need the nations laid out in the travel ban, actually in a way
Yemen doesn't even have a
than
government. Yemen, who are we dealing with in
But
Yemen?
it's not about the government. It's not about, people made the argument that we banned folks from those countries from traveling here because they don't have a government in place at home. But that's exactly the reason they're trying to come here, to seek refugee status.
We're going to talk a lot more about it, guys, because it's deep and it's layered. But leakers are now turning their sights on Jared Kushner, alleging that he's under, quote, FBI scrutiny in the Russia probe. But one key detail douses water on the whole thing. We'll explain when we return.
Leakers are at it again, this time with Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, being the target. Naturally, the media can't get enough of it.
Let's get right to the breaking news. CNN has now learned that President Trump's close advisor and son-in-law is now a focus in the FBI's Russia collusion probe.
That a member of the president's family, who doubles as one of his closest advisors, is being looked at by the FBI in its Russia probe. Multiple U.S. officials tell NBC News investigators believe Jared Kushner has significant information relevant to their inquiry.
The importance of these developments is that it brings the FBI investigation inside the White House and to the president's family.
While this is significant, the media and Democrats are also burying one critical point from the story. As the Washington Post reports, quote, the Post has not been told that Kushner is a target or the central focus of the investigation, and he has not been accused of any wrongdoing. So are people yet again getting ahead of themselves over this new report? Look, he was meeting with Russian officials around the same time Russian officials were talking about meddling. Fine, look into it. But looking into it isn't the same thing as finding anything. And Kushner's been saying, I'll talk to you about all these meetings to Congress. He's been very cooperative.
We should turn it over to our counselor here. So, not a target.
Yep.
That's a legal term. Not a subject. That's a legal term, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Person of interest, not a legal term, though, right?
No.
Focus, not a legal term. And being looked at. also not a legal term.
Yeah, so here's where the Times and the Post start to undermine their own credibility even further. Because this investigation is still ongoing. Kat's right. Jared Kushner and his lawyers have been at least rather transparent so far, saying, hey, he's willing to talk, he's willing to tell you what he knows, you know, whatever. Up and until those terms you're talking about, Eric, like suspect, he's really subject of an investigation, target. Until those are being used by the DOJ or the FBI, what are we talking about? And see, this is not in defense of Jared Kushner as much as it's an indictment of the sloppiness and really irresponsible reporting now we're seeing out of the Times and the Washington Post. And I say that as someone who for years subscribed to the Times, but it's sad. And like I said, they had to come out and apologize after this election cycle because they owned how sloppy and irresponsible they'd been in the coverage. But it doesn't seem to have gotten any better. In fact, I would say it maybe has gotten worse. What do you think?
Yeah. No, Jared, by the way, does Jared talk? Does he speak? I mean,
he's smart. He speaks with his lawyers, Joe.
I've never seen Jared.
That's really
He
smart.
said one word. I've never seen Jared Kushner. Jared, this is the Kushner family. I tell you, in Jersey, we're proud of how they stood behind Israel all those years. They're such a philanthropic family. And this kid, Jared's a great kid. This is ridiculous. They are grasping for straws. They got, like we say in Jersey, you got nothing. They got nothing. What do you get? Show me something. Exactly. There's no evidence at all. And to go after Jared, this nice kid who President Trump trusts, great son-in-law like that, they got to just lay off because now it's looking comical, guys.
At best, it's premature, but Joe, at worst, it's irresponsible.
Right, Gillian, I'm of the mind if I kind of want to wait and see what's found, but even Brennan's saying these could be innocent, maybe. People are talking about it as if it's in itself something damning.
Well, the bigger picture here, I think, you know, being a national security-minded person, I always look to the implications there for collective defense first. I think the bigger picture is really less of the indictment of irresponsible reporting, a left-leaning media. That's all fine and well. But to me, it really underscores the fact that leaks coming out of the White House, coming out of the executive branch, are probably the gravest threat to our national security today.
Yeah, well, but we don't, Gillian, we don't know that's where they're coming from. I mean, you're saying the executive branch, the White House, these leaks could be coming from the CIA, or they could be coming from Intel. That's part of the executive
branch.
Well, I know, but not necessarily the White House, though. I mean,
no, I said the White House or the executive branch, which includes all those departments and agencies, state, CIA, DOJ with FBI, all those.
You'll confirm a vast majority of those people in those positions, in those agencies, are still holdovers from the Obama era.
There I differ with you, Eric. I'm not a believer in the deep state. I've been there. I've worked there. I worked in 2 different administrations from different sides of the aisle. There is a core of really competent policy makers in the United States government that is not politically inclined. I've worked with them. I've seen them. I don't believe in. I think it's more conspiracy theory.
An acting attorney general who may have, well, I don't know.
The acting attorney general went in and defended the interests of the president by protecting the vice president. She called out the FBI director, James Comey, for doing things that she felt undermined security.
There are those of us who think she overstepped her bounds.
She called out General Flynn for lying to the vice president. We would never have known.
But Eric, let me push back on this too, because if you're saying that some of the leaks that may or may not be in the White House or in the greater executive board are Obama holdovers, why at some point doesn't President Trump say, forget it, gut them out, if that's where the leaks are coming from?
Here's why. This is a very good question, Eboni, but here's why. When you walk into the White House the first time, especially when you're Donald Trump walking into the White House, where he doesn't have that establishment backing, he doesn't have a whole slew of people ready to step into positions, you'll be able to testify to this. In the first 100 days or so, you're probably going to change out a couple thousand people. In the first year or so, how many? 5,000, 10,000 people. It takes time to get good, competent people.
It does, but a hard fact for everyone to chew over is that more than 50% of the executive branch is made up of people who began their tenure with the federal government prior to the Obama.
I understand that.
How can people who started during the Bush administration or the Clinton administration be Obama holders?
You're a smart person. Would you say these leaks are likely coming from this area or from the exact White House?
Well, what if you're, I'll let her answer,
Trump
Eric,
and his counselors.
But what if you're an American, you don't care where they come from, you just want them gone?
Good.
You just want them gone.
We're all on board with that.
We can all agree on that.
Not politicize something, maybe, sometime.
Hopeful.
Everyone, all of us. All right. President Trump is demanding that America's allies meet their obligations for defense and security. And what are some critics saying? It's a plot to cozy up to our enemies. Wait till you see this.
President Trump's reassertion of American leadership, leaving world leaders and the left dumbstruck. The president is capping off the final leg of his foreign trip at a G7 summit in Sicily with international politics and economics in the focus. But the president's tough talk to NATO allies yesterday, demanding they meet basic defense obligations, is sparking downright absurd responses.
The fact that our president does not respect those allies actually shows more warmth to Putin and his cronies, more warmth to the Saudis, where, of course, the 9/11 terrorists came from. That's really disturbing. It's exactly the opposite of no better friend, no worse enemy. It's saying that we're going to cozy up to our enemies and we're going to abandon our friends.
Pressuring our allies to meet their ends, just meet their end of the bargain is cozying up to our enemies. Gillian, I'm going to start with you. New York Times said Trump failed in his first major speech in Europe because he had an obsession with allies increasing their military budgets. Meanwhile, this is a basic treaty that they signed to be part of NATO.
I think that the president and the cabinet is striking the right tone when it comes to NATO. I was critical of the way the president spoke about NATO back during the campaign, but I think that his view on the subject and the importance of collective defense and this alliance and investing in it has really evolved. And so I give him credit for that. I think one of the things he was doing when he took this show on the road this week was really a demonstration to the entire world that he's on board now with the importance of the alliance. At the same time, it's equally important that the member countries step up and commit 2% of their GDP as they committed to doing when they signed on. I think something about like 5 members out of the 28 member nations are doing that at this point in time. It's also important to point out this is now not just something President Trump is doing on his own. This was part of his campaign platform. So it's a mandate from the American people.
Kat, you're fired up about this.
I love it, absolutely. Especially if you look at some of these countries that aren't paying. Belgium, they have a huge mess over there. A lot of the problems are coming from Belgium, and they're spending less than 1% of their GDP. Come on, Belgium, get it together. I think anybody would say that. And I think that it was a perfect tone, like you said, that Trump was striking. He wasn't saying he's not going to help. He's not saying the United States isn't their ally. He is joining together in a force against ISIS. But he's saying, come on, get it together, which absolutely needs to be said.
Deb?
Look, it's just like any relationship, Eric. You should get out of it what you put into it. Any relationship, okay? That's the thing about NATO. Seriously, wink, wink. But here's the thing about NATO. I love our allies. I think those relationships are important, absolutely. But as everyone is saying here, Gillian, Kat, I'm sure Joe agrees, they're not putting in. So why do they get to expect such undying and unwavering commitment when they're not contributing their good faith?
Let's get Joe in here. I have a follow-up to Gillian. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I love it. I love the cowboy style of Donald Trump. I'm sorry. I am sorry. Forgive me, but Barack Obama, classy. He was a great orator. But what did we get out of it? Being nice to the rest of the world. ISIS, we got TPP, we got no jobs. Donald Trump said, I thought in a very nice, respectable way, guys, you got to pony up a little bit. We can't be the world police anymore and pay for it because it comes out of our pockets.
And Gillian, now this hits on something. This is a tone I think he struck perfectly. He's getting a lot of pushback from the left. Do you see what he did about Article 5?
Yeah.
He basically said, you're going to put up what you agreed to put up, or we may not be there for you in the event something goes down bad and you haven't been putting up your 2% of your GDP.
Made it conditional.
Yeah, and the U.S. has been spending something like
3.5
to 4, depending on what year you're kind of taking the temperature. And we've been financing a lot of the West's wars around the world for the last 2 decades. And I think regardless of what the president thinks, the American people have no appetite for this. It is over, dead, done. They don't want another American boot on the ground in the Middle East. That's right. They don't care what it is.
Push that Prime Minister of Montenegro. Push him right out of the way. Come on.
But, a nice little
No, but that is a scary thing. When a small country like Montenegro, who has a history of picking fights of war, all of a sudden, at 22% of the NATO budget, the United States is going to back Montenegro if they pick a fight with someone else.
They avail themselves of the benefits.
It's not supposed to be a daycare center. It's supposed to be an alliance.
There you go.
Before we go, and I know they want us to go, can we just very quickly say that I think Melania Trump was an amazing first lady on this trip. She was respect, grace, glamour. She was fantastic across the board.
My favorite thing was that leather skirt she wore in Saudi Arabia.
Ooh, that was cute.
Loved it.
I think she looked
great.
spectacular.
Yeah.
Stunning.
Good to go. Democrats' dreams of an anti-Trump wave sweeping America floundering in big sky country despite all that body slam drama, while their message is ringing hollow. Next.
And we were trying different things, and we were smoking funny things, making love out by the lake to our favorite song, sipping whiskey out the bottle.
Welcome back to the Fox News Specialists. Our specialists today are Miss Gillian Turner and Joe Piscopo. So we'll continue our conversation. Montana's special congressional election had been trumpeted by Democrats as a referendum on President Trump. Some of them are not liking the results. Despite being charged with assaulting a reporter, Republican Greg Gianforte scored a 6-point win over his Democratic rival and apologized for body slamming incident during his victory speech last night. Democrats went all in trying to win this election. So does this show that their anti-Trump message may not be landing with voters? Joe, I'll start with you. So they did spend a lot of money, but Democrats spent a lot of money, Republicans spent a lot of money. Does this really tell us anything, or isn't this spin?
There's 3 Italians in Montana, right? One guy's got to do a smackdown. I mean, we get no respect. I know every Italian American across the country said, no, don't throw the reporter to the ground. You're Italian. 3 Italians over there. I don't know. I thought we kind of had fun with it this morning on the radio. It was funny because the reporter kept saying, you broke my glasses. You know, go back, take them out. A little bit of, it's fun to get a little, listen, it was inexcusable.
It's not good though, right?
It was inexcusable.
Wait,
it was inexcusable.
I did a monologue on this yesterday.
But I think they're teaching a class at liberal colleges now how to fight, you know, these conservative congressional candidates. You broke my glasses,
Well,
you know? But it was wrong. It was reprehensible. And especially as an Italian-American, so proud of all the accomplishments.
I'm glad you finished it up with who's wrong and reprehensible, because there's no reason for anyone to put their hands on anybody. My monologue, you weren't here yesterday, but my monologue was what was also reprehensible was the left-wing media blaming Donald Trump for what Gianforte did in Montana. And I'll tell you what, you know, he still won by 6%. Now, Montana's a very Republican, very red state. Yes. But the left is going, oh, see, here, this is the beginning of the end of the Trump wave, and they're wrong.
I'm worried about his judgment doing it to a reporter in front of other reporters. Even when you're 5 years old, you know, you don't hit your brother when your mom's looking, right? It's kind of the same thing. And then normally when you get older than 5, you learn to resolve conflicts other ways than physical violence, which he also should have done, not saying this was acceptable at all. But he hit a reporter in front of reporters. 5-year-olds got better skills and vigilante justice than that.
So, Gillian,
do it behind closed doors?
Yeah, I used to hit my brother all the time, and never my mom.
Disclaimer, the Fox News specialists do not condone
I said I don't condone it.
So, Gillian, let me ask you this, though. Does this really tell us anything, though? Because we know that 37% of this race's votes happened before the body slamming incident even occurred. So, for me, this looks... Was it 70? No, 37% before it actually occurred. But either way, a big chunk. People had already voted before this guy was body slammed anyway. So for me, it looks like the left is trying to spin a narrative, the right is trying to spin a narrative. The guy just won the election. I think it's that simple.
I just kept thinking that this was like deja vu, because what does this remind you of?
Georgia.
A hint is the 2016 presidential race, where the Republican conservative candidate in the 11th hour has a major tussle with propriety to the point where he invokes criticism from both sides of the aisle. Even Speaker Ryan steps in and says, I don't condone that behavior, but I don't think that it necessarily affects the candidate's ability to do his job. I just kept getting drawn back. I think this is bad PR. You know, like drags me back to the dark days.
Gianforte's action to Donald Trump also, are you?
No, I'm not I don't buy into that causality.
No, everybody's grown.
Argument. I don't think that you can accuse.
Well, you invoked it.
Well, no, but in a different way. I'm saying it reminded me of the way a specific incident, which was the President Trump with Billy Bush on the bus talking about women. Exactly. It reminded me of that, the way that this has been blown
used as like
out
a petri dish.
Exactly.
To
but I don't think that you can
statement.
responsibly put this on President Trump's shoulders. I think that certainly there's a lot of discontent among the American public with the media, the mainstream media. Donald Trump did not create that. I think that he embraced it and reflected it back to the American people, which is part of the reason why he got elected. But I don't think that you can, you know, if somebody shoots a reporter dead out on 6th Avenue tomorrow, you can't blame that on President Trump. There has to be
some accountability. Everybody's got to be grown.
But
I agree with that.
The divide's got to stop. The hate's got to stop. We just got to stop. I've never seen such rancor like this in all my years. We just got to chill out.
We got to grow up, right? Speaking of President Trump and Republicans' agenda, Hillary Clinton coming out swinging today during a commencement address at her alma mater, Wesley College.
You are graduating at a time when there is a full-fledged assault on truth and reason. When people in power invent their own facts and attack those who question them, it can mark the beginning of the end of a free society. That is not hyperbole. It is what authoritarian regimes throughout history have done.
Eric, I know that you missed Hillary Clinton so much, so she went to Wellesley
what a
for
hypocrite. This is a woman who said we were broke when we left the White House during her campaign, and she's worth half a billion dollars. I mean, please, it was hyperbole. Later on in that speech, she did something which I kind of pushed back on Gillian for doing. She invoked impeachment. Now, she went through this whole thing and then tagged it with, oh, I'm talking about someone else. I'm not talking about, she was talking about Richard Nixon. She wasn't talking about Donald Trump. But leading up to that final punchline, you thought she was talking about impeachment as well. This is despicable. Have we not had enough of Hillary Clinton? In fact, haven't we had enough of all the Clintons? Can they just go away and go spend some of their money somewhere else?
I can't get enough of them. I carry a picture of Hillary Clinton with me everywhere I go. No, I'm kidding. I also have had enough a long time ago, and have her stand up there and be like, end of a free society. Okay, please. You're a freedom fighter now, Hillary Clinton. You're a freedom fighter now,
I think she went back in time, Kat, to 69 when she was a student at Wellesley.
Right.
Where I think she actually did do some good work back, like, what, 40, 50 years ago.
Right, because it's like, no shade.
Which work would that be that she did?
I mean, I think she had a couple protests. That was probably back in her better days.
She's real into the government making decisions for people, for someone to call herself a freedom fighter.
To be fair to her.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I mean, if we put our feelings, put your feelings aside.
She wasn't fair to me.
The point I'm trying to make is, I think it is unrealistic to expect somebody to kind of sail off silently into the sunset. When they've lost the general election, we didn't expect that of John McCain. We didn't expect that of Mitt Romney. We certainly didn't expect that of John Kerry.
We got it from Mondale.
All kind of stayed around and became elder statesman type figures in the party, and I think that's probably what she's going to end up doing.
Romney was he walked away. He didn't really, but he certainly didn't do what she's doing.
I'm not condoning what she said. I'm not condoning the forum. I personally feel like it's inappropriate to bring politics into these commencement speeches. I think it does a disservice to the students, but that seems to be what everybody does these days.
She should do Dancing with the Stars.
Joe, quick last word.
Stop the hate. I had no animus or hate toward Mrs. Clinton. Sorry, Eric. You know, really, you just got to
sounds like someone knows the Clintons from the neighborhood.
That's okay, Joe. We love you. When we come back, we'll debut a brand new segment, Cat on the Street, featuring our very own Kat Timpf. Watch out, New York. Don't go away.
Be a simple kind of man. Be something.
It's time for our newest segment, Cat on the Street. That's me. I'll take the pulse of my fellow Americans about any strange or ridiculous things making the news. This week, one of the most buzzed about incidents has been President Trump's glowing orb ceremony in Saudi Arabia. I headed to New York's Union Square, asking people to try and make sense of it. This is Trump, the Egyptian president, and the Saudi Arabian king holding an orb to mark the opening of a center to combat extremism.
I think it's interesting. I think Trump doesn't really know what he's doing.
I have no idea what this is.
It's an orb.
An orb?
It's an orb.
Okay, and...
As one does with the orb. How does this make you feel? How does this make you feel?
So uncomfortable.
Really? You never seen like 3 people just standing in the dark holding an orb?
I can't say I have.
I haven't really been to a lot of parties with orbs lately. Like maybe like a couple years ago, but
Yeah, that's more of a college thing.
There's, conceivably 3 terrorists who are there celebrating anti-terrorism.
Trump is a terrorist?
Oh, yeah, clearly. Anyone
I don't know about that.
who invokes fear, bad hombres.
I feel like you got to be more than do more than say mean stuff to be a terrorist, though.
I mean, if you know the history of all 3 of these men, nothing they do makes sense.
I think it does make sense because they're opening a center, and they had to do something to mark the opening, and none of them drink, so they can't toast to it. This looks like something that you do when you're trying to get your ex-boyfriend back, right?
Yeah, exactly. Some spirits.
At least that's what I've heard. I feel like orbs are, a big problem solver, though.
I don't know if that's something that they do religiously.
It reminded me of like the Science Museum. You get the static hair. They should have done one of those.
Oh my God, totally.
When was the last time that you touched an orb?
I've never touched an orb.
Yeah, it's been a while for me too.
Yeah.
Like Tuesday. And you like the orb though?
Oh, I love it, yes.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
It signifies that he has his hands on the entire world and he's trying to bring the world together.
I might want to get an orb.
I wouldn't know where to buy one.
What do you think that Trump's thinking about in this picture?
I think he's like, it was a pretty good day.
I think when we look in the history books, there'll definitely be a chapter on this moment, this orb specifically.
I hope not.
You don't think we should do that more, like opening day, set of the first pitch, everybody orb? What size poster of this should I get to put above my bedroom wall?
Oh, 8 by 10 to start, and then try to do a full wall painting portrait.
So you have high hopes for Trump's
I
trip
voted for him, and I would still vote for him.
I loved the orb. I thought it was a great photo.
That was a great package.
And it's a globe, isn't it? Who decided to call it an orb?
Well, it was glowing.
Yeah.
An orb in the dark, and I mean, it looks like something's going on, and that's great. I kind of want to get one for my apartment. Whenever anyone comes over, I'll say, "Come here for a second." And
they sold this to the president, like, yeah, you're going to walk over with the Saudi president and whomever else, and you're going to put your hand on a globe. It's going to be lit. And he's like, how bad could this be?
It was lit, Eric.
Literally, as the kids say,
it's being turned into some,
Eric, what do you mean who decided to call it an orb? Who else? The Illuminati. Of course, that's who it was.
Exactly.
What do you mean?
The alt-left.
Right, you like the orb? Are you a fan of the orb?
Yeah, anything from Spencer Gifts. I love it.
Yeah.
It's like going to a mall, man, in Jersey. You see those things. Who came up with this? Who's the PR guy that came up with this? We'll get this orb and we'll get everybody around the orb. Not a good idea.
Yeah,
the piece was very funny, though.
Thank you. Trump looks like he's enjoying the orb. The Saudi king doesn't look like he's having as much fun with the orb, which how can you have a bad time with an orb? I don't know.
It's good lighting, though.
All right, don't go away. Don't go away. Don't. We're circling back with our specialists, Joe Piscopo and Gillian Turner, right after this.
Okay, time to circle back with our specialists, Gillian Turner and Joe Piscopo. Gillian, I'm going to start with you. You work for both Bush and Obama, so I'm going to go through a couple of things. Tell me which one is more of each. So, Bush or Obama, more fun?
This is terrible.
Pick one. Pick one. You're in the hot seat.
I'm going to go with the Bush administration.
Okay,
because they had more activities.
Smarter. Bush or Obama?
Oh, Eric.
More liberal. How about that one? How about this one? More liberal.
All right, President Obama.
Okay. All right, Ed.
Well, I want to ask Gillian another question because I had some training in classical ballet back in my day, but I was a hot mess and I had to give it up, girl. But you went far. So how far did you go in your training?
So I trained from ages 8. You start really young because you got to like form those bones into the right shape. It's a pretty brutal kind of training. So I trained 8 to age 17, and then when I turned 18, I got a job with a professional ballet company, which I did for 1 year and then retired.
And then you went into politics.
And then I went to college and went into politics. And
I did the same thing. Me in a tutu. I mean, just to die for. I mean,
I wanted to ask you, you're pretty excited. New Jersey, love New Jersey.
Yeah.
See, it doesn't, I don't know if you know this, it's not really like a huge popular tourist destination.
Jersey?
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you want to tell people why they're wrong, why everyone should go to New Jersey?
The Jersey Shore, where some of us may be going down this weekend.
I might be having a beer with Piscopo at the Hudson House.
Jersey Shore.
know. I kept it so quiet this morning on the radio. I said, I'll be with Eric Bolling. I'm not going to undisclosed location, a secret summit.
City, too.
The question,
Atlantic
the question
City
of Piscopo is
full of
Atlantic.
it was rumored. It was rumored you were going to run for governor of New Jersey. Why did you back?
Because Kim Guadagno, the lieutenant governor, came out to the house in Hunterdon County, and she sat down. She said, Joe, we should join together, and we should do this together. She laid out such a great case for me. I looked, she goes,
can we have another Republican governor of New Jersey?
You might. She is so refreshing, if I may, that you very well may. But I stepped down, and it's, I'll tell you, every morning I get up, I say, I wish I was in, but I would have been a disruptor, and it's not my nature to do that anymore.
People like disruptors, Joe.
I know.
People like them.
Listen,
it's the era of disruption.
It's the era. Disruptors are hashtag winning. For sure.
Yeah. Good. Thanks for making me feel good, Ebony.
Oh, my pleasure.
You want to do smarter? You want to have your Bush or Obama smarter?
Eric, you got to let it go.
All right, you know what we're going to let go? We're going to let go on the show. Sorry, we finished our third week.
Third week.
Have a great time.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to our Fox News specialists today, Gillian Turner and Joe Piscopo. And we thank you for all watching, and make sure you follow us on social media at Specialist FNC on both Twitter and Facebook. Remember, 5 o'clock will never be the same. Special report coming up right now.
Nations who compete economically vow to work together to fight terror.